The wedding dress weighed more than chains as Hannah Thornton stumbled through the darkness, her lungs burning with each desperate breath, while the sound of pursuing horses echoed somewhere behind her in the Arizona Territory night. The year was 1883, and Hannah had done the unthinkable. She had fled from her own wedding ceremony, leaving behind a church full of stunned guests, a humiliated groom, and a father whose rage would be legendary. But better to face the unknown wilderness than spend a lifetime shackled to Marcus Dalton, a man whose cruelty she had discovered only 3 days before the ceremony. The bruises on her arms were still fresh, hidden beneath the elaborate lace sleeves of this ridiculous dress that kept snagging on every mesquite bush and desert shrub. The moon hung low and silver over the Arizona desert as Hannah crashed through a fence line, not caring about the torn fabric or the scratches on her hands. She could see a structure ahead, dark and looming against the starlit sky. A barn, weathered and solid, standing beside what looked like a modest ranch house. No lights burned in the windows of either building. With her strength nearly depleted, Hannah made for the barn, praying it would offer sanctuary, at least for tonight. The barn door stood slightly ajar, and she slipped inside, immediately engulfed by the warm scent of hay, horses, and leather. Her eyes adjusted slowly to the deeper darkness within. She could make out several stalls, farming equipment hanging on the walls, and a ladder leading up to a hayloft. Without hesitation, Hannah climbed that ladder, her fine wedding boots slipping on the rungs, her voluminous skirts catching and tearing further with each step upward. The hayloft was warm and dry, filled with loose hay and several bales stacked against the far wall. Hannah collapsed into the hay, finally allowing herself to cry. Silent tears streamed down her face as she buried herself deeper into the hay, hoping to become invisible. She could still hear her father's voice booming through the church as he had discovered her gone. "Find her. Bring her back. She will marry Marcus Dalton if I have to drag her to the altar myself." But Hannah would rather die than go back. She had seen the real Marcus 3 nights ago when she had visited his home to discuss the wedding arrangements. He had been drinking, and the mask of charm had slipped. He had grabbed her roughly, told her exactly what kind of wife he expected her to be, showed her with his grip, and his words that she would be property, nothing more. When she had tried to leave, he had twisted her arm until she cried out, then laughed and released her, warning her that if she told anyone, he would make her life a living hell. And her father, wealthy and powerful in Kingman, Arizona, cared more about the business partnership this marriage would create than about his daughter's well-being. So Hannah had run. She had waited until the ceremony itself, until everyone was gathered and distracted. And then she had fled out the side door of the church, grabbed the nearest horse, and ridden into the desert like her life depended on it. Because it did. Sleep came in fits and starts, punctuated by nightmares of being dragged back to the church. When dawn began filtering through the cracks in the barn walls, Hannah finally fell into an exhausted slumber, still buried in the hay, her white dress now brown with dust and stained with grass. The sound of the barn door opening fully woke her with a start. Hannah froze, barely breathing, pressing herself deeper into the hay. She heard footsteps below, the soft sounds of someone moving with purpose and familiarity. A man's voice, low and gentle, spoke to the horses. "Morning, Cisco." "Morning, Ranger. Let us get you some breakfast, shall we?" Hannah remained completely still, listening to the sounds of a morning routine. Feed buckets being filled, water being poured, the contented sounds of horses eating. The man was humming softly, a melody she did not recognize. His voice was warm, unhurried. After what felt like an eternity, she heard him move toward the ladder. "I know you are up there," he said, his voice calm and non-threatening. "I saw the trail in the dust, saw your horse drinking from my trough before it wandered off. You can come down or I can come up, but either way we should probably talk." Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. She considered remaining silent, but what good would that do? He knew she was here. Slowly she sat up, hay cascading off her shoulders, and peered over the edge of the loft. The man standing at the base of the ladder was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that were a startling blue even in the dim barn light. He wore simple rancher's clothing, dusty from work, and his face was weathered in a way that suggested he spent most of his life outdoors. He was probably in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most, and there was something steady about him that made Hannah's racing heart slow just slightly. "I am not going to hurt you," he said, holding up his hands to show they were empty. "But you are on my property, wearing what appears to be a wedding dress, and you look like you have been through a tornado. Name is Bennett Quinn. This is my ranch, small as it is." Hannah gripped the edge of the loft, her voice hoarse from crying and thirst. "Please, please do not send me back. I will leave. I will go right now. Just please do not tell anyone I was here." Bennett's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. He studied her face, and she knew he could probably see the fear there, raw and real. "Send you back where? Who is looking for you?" "Everyone," Hannah whispered. "My father, my—" She could not bring herself to say fiancé. "The man I was supposed to marry, all of Kingman, probably." "Kingman is 20 miles from here," Bennett said slowly. "You ran 20 miles in a wedding dress. I rode most of it. The horse ran off when I fell." Bennett was quiet for a moment, then he gestured to the ladder. "Why do not you come down here? I have got water, food in the house. You look like you could use both. Then you can tell me what you are running from, and we will figure out what to do." Hannah hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust anyone, especially not a strange man in the middle of nowhere. But what choice did she have? She could not stay in this barn forever, and she was desperately thirsty. Slowly, carefully, she descended the ladder, her stiff muscles protesting every movement. When she reached the bottom and turned to face him, Bennett's eyes widened slightly. Up close, he could clearly see the bruises on her arms where her torn sleeves had fallen away. His jaw tightened, but he did not comment on them. Instead, he simply said, "Come on, let us get you inside." The morning sun was bright and already warm as Hannah followed Bennett across the yard to the ranch house. It was a simple structure, well-maintained but clearly the home of a man living alone. He held the door open for her, and she stepped into a tidy main room with a kitchen area, a table with 2 chairs, and a sitting area with a worn but comfortable-looking sofa near a stone fireplace. "Sit," Bennett said, gesturing to the table. He moved to the kitchen area and pumped water into a tin cup, bringing it to her first. Hannah drank gratefully, the cool water soothing her parched throat. He refilled it twice more before she finally felt satisfied. Bennett put coffee on to boil, then retrieved bread, butter, and some cold bacon from his larder. He set them before her without comment, and Hannah ate ravenously, not caring how unladylike she must appear. She had not eaten since yesterday morning, too nervous about the wedding to touch the breakfast her mother had prepared. When she finally slowed down, Bennett sat across from her with his own cup of coffee, waiting patiently. The silence stretched, but it was not uncomfortable. He seemed like a man accustomed to silence, not threatened by it. "My name is Hannah Thornton," she finally said. "My father is Richard Thornton. He owns the largest ranch in the Kingman area and half the businesses in town. Yesterday was supposed to be my wedding day. I was supposed to marry Marcus Dalton, who owns the other half of the businesses in town. It would have united their holdings, made them both even wealthier and more powerful." "But you ran," Bennett said quietly. But I ran, Hannah confirmed. She took a shaky breath. Marcus is not a good man. He hid it well around my family, around everyone. But 3 nights ago I saw who he really is, what he is capable of. She gestured to the bruises on her arms. This was just a warning, a preview of what my life would be like as his wife. Bennett's expression darkened, his hands tightening around his coffee cup. And your father? My father cares about power and money in that order. When I tried to tell my mother about Marcus, she told me I was being dramatic, that all marriages require adjustment, that I needed to be a dutiful daughter. Hannah's voice broke. So I decided I would rather be a disobedient daughter who survives than a dutiful one who does not. Bennett was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he nodded, as if coming to a decision. Stay as long as you need to heal, he said simply. Hannah stared at him. What? You heard me. Stay here. Rest. Figure out what you want to do next. I've got a spare room. It is not much, just a bed and a dresser, but the door has a lock. You will be safe here. You do not even know me, Hannah protested. Why would you help me? Bennett leaned back in his chair, his blue eyes steady on hers. Because somebody should. Because no woman should have to marry a man who hurts her. Because you look like you have been running on fear and desperation for too long and you need a place to catch your breath. He paused. And because I have got a sister. Somewhere. Last I heard, she was married to a man who treated her poorly and I could not help her. She would not let me. So maybe this is me trying to do for you what I could not do for her. Tears welled up in Hannah's eyes again. They will look for me. When they find me here, they will cause you trouble. Let them come, Bennett said with a shrug. This is my land. You are my guest. And I am not afraid of some wealthy businessmen from Kingman. Hannah wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. The adrenaline that had kept her moving for the past 12 hours was finally depleting, leaving her hollow and shaking. Bennett seemed to notice because he stood and gestured toward a hallway. Come on. Let me show you the room. You need sleep more than anything else right now. The spare room was indeed simple, but it was clean and bright, with a window that looked out over open-range land. The bed was made up with a faded quilt, and there was a small dresser with a wash basin and pitcher. It was more welcoming than any palace could have been at that moment. I will bring you some clothes, Bennett said. They will be too big, but better than that dress. There is a lock on the door, like I said. Use it if it makes you feel safer. I will be working around the ranch, but I will come back at midday to check on you and make lunch. Mr. Quinn, Hannah started, but he held up a hand. Just Bennett. We do not stand much on formality out here. Bennett, Hannah corrected softly. Thank you. I do not know how to repay you for this kindness. Do not worry about repaying me. Just rest. He paused at the doorway. And Hannah, you made the right choice. Running, it took courage. After he left, closing the door gently behind him, Hannah stood in the middle of the small room and let herself breathe. Really breathe for the first time in days. She locked the door, not because she was afraid of Bennett, but because the ability to control her own space felt precious and new. She struggled out of the ruined wedding dress, leaving it in a heap on the floor. Dressed only in her chemise and petticoat, she washed her face and hands in the basin, watching the water turn gray with dust. Then she climbed into the bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin, and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. When Hannah woke, the sun was high in the sky, and she could hear the sound of hammering somewhere outside. She lay still for a moment, orienting herself, remembering where she was and why. The panic that had been her constant companion since she discovered Marcus's true nature was still there, but it was muted now, pushed back by exhaustion and the strange sense of safety she felt in this little room. She noticed a pile of folded clothes on the dresser that had not been there before. Bennett must have brought them while she slept. The thought should have bothered her, but somehow it did not. She rose and examined the offerings. A simple cotton shirt, work pants with a rope for a belt, and thick socks. All far too large for her, but clean and serviceable. Hannah dressed quickly, rolling up the pant legs and shirt sleeves multiple times to make them somewhat functional. She caught her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser and almost laughed. She looked absurd, like a child playing dress-up. Her dark hair, which had been elaborately styled for the wedding, hung in a tangled mess down her back. She found a comb on the dresser and worked through the tangles, then braided it simply. When she emerged from the room, she found Bennett in the kitchen area, stirring something in a pot on the stove. He looked up as she entered, and his expression registered surprise, then something that might have been amusement, though he was kind enough not to laugh. "They fit well, I see," he said dryly. Despite everything, Hannah smiled. "They are perfect. Much better than a torn wedding dress." "Fair enough," he gestured to the table. "Stew. Nothing fancy, but it is hot and filling. You should eat more. You look like you could use it." They ate together in a comfortable silence that surprised Hannah. She had expected to feel awkward, trapped in the home of a stranger, dependent on his charity. But Bennett had a way of making space for silence that did not feel heavy. He did not press her with questions or demand explanations beyond what she had already given. After they finished eating, Bennett pushed back from the table. "I have got work to do, fences to mend in the north pasture. You are welcome to come with me if you want to get out of the house, or you can stay here, whatever feels right to you." Hannah considered. The thought of staying in the house alone made her nervous, even with the door locked. "I could come with you," she said, "if I would not be in the way." "You would not be in the way. Might actually be helpful to have an extra pair of hands." They walked out together into the bright Arizona afternoon. The sky was an endless blue, and the air smelled of sage and dust. Hannah followed Bennett to a small barn where he loaded tools and wire onto a wagon hitched to a sturdy brown horse. She climbed up beside him on the wagon seat, and they headed out across the rangeland. The ranch was not large, Bennett explained as they rode. About 300 acres, with maybe 40 head of cattle at last count. He worked it alone, except during roundup when he hired a few temporary hands from town. It was a hard living but an honest one, and it was his. "How long have you had this place?" Hannah asked. "About 5 years now. Bought it with money I saved working on bigger ranches, doing cattle drives up to Kansas, whatever work I could find. It is not much, but it is mine. Nobody tells me what to do here. Nobody controls me." Hannah understood that sentiment more than he probably knew. It must be nice. "Being your own master." Bennett glanced at her. "It is, but it is also lonely sometimes." He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. They reached the section of fence that needed mending, and Bennett showed Hannah how to hold the wire taut while he hammered in the staples. The work was hard and hot, but there was something satisfying about it. Something real and immediate that required her full attention, leaving no room for fear or worry about the future. As they worked, Bennett talked about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd gradually, about the challenges of water in this dry country. Hannah found herself relaxing, drawn into his quiet competence and steady presence. He treated her like a person, not a fragile thing to be managed or a piece of property to be controlled. It was a novel experience. The sun was sinking toward the horizon when they finally headed back to the ranch house. Hannah's hands were sore and her back ached, but she felt more clear-headed than she had in weeks. Physical work had pushed out the constant anxiety, at least for a while. That evening, Bennett taught her how to make biscuits while he fried bacon and eggs for dinner. They ate on the porch as the sky turned orange and pink, watching the desert transform in the fading light. Somewhere in the distance, A coyote called, and Bennett's horses whinnied in response. "What happens when they find me?" Hannah asked quietly, breaking the peaceful silence. Bennett set down his plate and looked at her directly. "That depends on what you want to happen. Do you want to go back?" "No, never." "Then you do not go back. It is that simple." "But my father, your father, does not own you. You are what, 20 years old?" 22. 22. "You are a grown woman. You get to make your own choices." "The law might not see it that way," Hannah said. "Women are not exactly free agents in the eyes of the law." Bennett acknowledged this with a nod. "That is true enough, but we are a long way from courts and lawyers out here. And like I said, this is my land. If you do not want to leave, you do not have to." Hannah studied his profile in the fading light. "Why are you doing this? Really?" Bennett was quiet for a long moment. "My sister Sarah married a man when she was 19. He was charming, successful, from a good family. 2 years into the marriage, I visited them in Tucson. She had bruises. When I confronted her, she denied it. When I confronted him, he threw me out. Said what happened between a man and his wife was nobody else's business. I tried to get her to leave, but she would not. Said she had made her vows, that it was her duty to stay." He paused, his jaw tight. "Last letter I got from her was 3 years ago. She said she was fine, told me to stop writing, to stop trying to help. I have not heard from her since." "I am sorry," Hannah said softly. Bennett shrugged, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "I could not help Sarah. She would not let me, but I can help you if you will let me. So that is why. Does that answer your question?" "Yes," Hannah whispered. "And for what it is worth, I am letting you help. I am grateful." Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Bennett rose early to tend to the animals and do the never-ending work a ranch required. Hannah helped where she could, learning quickly despite her complete lack of experience. She had grown up wealthy, with servants to do all the practical work. She had never cooked a meal, mended a fence, or mucked out a stall in her life. But she threw herself into the work with determination, grateful to have something to occupy her hands and mind. Bennett was a patient teacher. He showed her how to collect eggs from the chickens he kept, how to milk the cow, how to recognize when hay needed turning. He taught her to ride his gentler horse, Ranger, in case she ever needed to get somewhere quickly. Hannah learned quickly, driven by a need to be useful, to earn her place here rather than simply accepting charity. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk. Hannah learned that Bennett had grown up in Texas, the youngest of 3 children. His parents had died of fever when he was 16, and he had struck out on his own, working his way west. He had loved the open country of Arizona from the moment he arrived and had vowed to make a life here. Hannah, in turn, told him about growing up in Kingman as the only child of wealthy parents, about the expectations that had weighed on her from childhood to be perfect, obedient, decorative, to marry well and increase the family's status. She had been educated, but only in things deemed appropriate for a lady: music, art, French, nothing practical, nothing that would give her independence. "You play?" Bennett asked one evening, gesturing to an old, battered guitar that hung on the wall inside. Hannah shook her head. "Piano, but not well. I never really enjoyed it. It was just something I was supposed to do." "What did you enjoy?" Hannah had to think about it. Nobody had ever really asked her that before. "Reading," she finally said. "I loved reading. Adventure stories, mostly. Stories about people going places, doing things, being free. My mother thought it was a waste of time, but I would hide books in my room and read by candlelight." Bennett smiled. "I've got some books, not many but a few. You are welcome to read them." "Really? Really?" That night, Hannah discovered that Bennett's small collection included 3 precious volumes: a worn copy of The Last of the Mohicans, a book of Wordsworth's poetry, and a leather-bound journal filled with handwritten recipes and notes that Bennett explained had belonged to his mother. Hannah read late into the night, savoring the escape that only books could provide. A week passed, then two. No one came looking for her. Hannah began to relax, to allow herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she had actually escaped. The bruises on her arms faded from purple to yellow to nothing. The tension she had carried in her shoulders eased. She started to sleep through the night without nightmares. She also started to notice things about Bennett. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, which was not often but always genuine when it happened. The patience he showed with his animals, the gentleness in his hands when he tended to an injured bird they found near the barn. The way he never stood too close to her, never made her feel trapped or threatened, always giving her space and choice. One afternoon, while they were working together to repair the barn roof, Hannah found herself studying the line of his shoulders, the capable way he moved. She caught herself and looked away, confused by the flutter in her stomach. She had just escaped one man. She should not be thinking about another one, no matter how kind he was, but she could not quite stop herself from noticing. Bennett, for his part, was discovering that he enjoyed having Hannah around more than he had expected. The ranch had been lonely, even if he had made his peace with that loneliness. Having someone to talk to over meals, someone to share the work with, made the days feel different, fuller somehow. And Hannah was good company, quick to learn and equally quick to laugh once she relaxed enough to let herself. He noticed other things too. The way the morning light caught in her dark hair when she hung laundry, the concentration on her face when she was learning something new, the growing confidence in her movements as she became more comfortable with ranch work. He tried not to notice these things, tried to remind himself that she was here because she needed sanctuary, not because she was interested in him. But he noticed anyway. It was the beginning of the third week when trouble finally arrived. Hannah was in the kitchen, learning to make bread under Bennett's instruction, when they heard the sound of horses approaching. Multiple horses, moving fast. Bennett's whole body went tense, and he moved quickly to the window. "How many?" Hannah asked, her voice tight with fear. "4 riders." Bennett watched them approach. "Fancy horses, expensive tack. I am guessing these are your father's men." Hannah felt the blood drain from her face. "What do we do?" Bennett turned to her, his expression serious. "We tell them the truth. You are here because you want to be. You are not leaving unless you choose to. But Hannah, I need to know, do you want to stay?" "Yes," Hannah said without hesitation. "I want to stay." Bennett nodded. "Then we will make sure they understand that. Stay inside." "Let me talk to them first." "No," Hannah said firmly. "I should face them. I ran away once. I am not going to hide now." Bennett looked like he wanted to argue but respected her decision. "All right, but stay behind me at least at first." They walked out onto the porch together as the 4 riders pulled up in the yard. Hannah recognized 3 of them immediately. 2 of her father's ranch hands, Tom and Pete, and Marcus Dalton himself, sitting tall in his saddle with an expression of cold fury on his handsome face. The 4th man she did not recognize, but he wore a badge of county sheriff, probably bought and paid for by her father. Marcus dismounted first, his eyes fixing on Hannah with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Hannah, thank God, we have been searching everywhere for you. Come here, darling. Let us take you home." His voice was smooth, concerned, the perfect imitation of a worried fiancé. But Hannah saw the rage underneath, the promise of retribution in his eyes. "I am not going anywhere," Hannah said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I am staying here." "Hannah, you are not thinking clearly," Marcus said, taking a step closer. "You have been through an ordeal. You were obviously confused, frightened, but everything is going to be all right now. We will reschedule the wedding, and there is not going to be a wedding," Hannah interrupted. I am not marrying you, Marcus. I am not going back. The mask of concern slipped just for a moment, and Hannah saw the real Marcus underneath. The man who had hurt her, who would have spent a lifetime controlling and diminishing her. Then he composed himself, turning his attention to Bennett. I do not know who you are or what you think you are doing, but you are harboring another man's fiancé. That is a serious offense. She is not your fiancé, Bennett said calmly. She ran from the wedding, which means there was no wedding. She is a free woman and she has chosen to stay here as my guest. That is not illegal. The sheriff cleared his throat. Now, miss, your father is real worried about you. He just wants you to come home safe. Nobody is going to force you to marry if you do not want to. Hannah nearly laughed at the lie. Is my father here, Sheriff? Or did he send his business partner and some hired men to fetch me like a stray cow? The sheriff shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Your father is a respected man in Kingman, miss. He has your best interests at heart. My father has his bank account's best interests at heart, Hannah shot back. That is why he wanted me to marry Marcus, to merge their holdings and increase their power. I am just a piece on their chessboard and I am done playing the game. Marcus's composure finally cracked. You ungrateful little, he lunged forward, reaching for Hannah, but Bennett moved faster. He stepped between them, his hand dropping to the pistol at his hip in a clear warning. I would think very carefully about your next move, Bennett said quietly. His voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. This is my property. She is my guest. You are not taking her anywhere she does not want to go. You have no right, Marcus started. I have every right. This is my land. You are trespassing. The lady has made her wishes clear. Now you can ride away peacefully or we can have a problem. Your choice. The two ranch hands had been silent through the exchange, but now Tom spoke up. Miss Hannah, your mother is real upset. She is beside herself with worry. Could you not at least come back and talk to your folks? Set their minds at ease. Hannah felt a pang of guilt about her mother, but she remembered her mother's dismissal of her concerns about Marcus, her insistence that Hannah was being dramatic. Tell my mother I am safe and well. Tell her I will write to her, but I am not coming back to Kingman. You cannot just disappear, Marcus said, his voice rising. You have responsibilities, obligations. Our families have an agreement. You have an agreement, Hannah corrected. I never agreed to anything. I was told what to do and expected to comply, but I am done being told what to do. The sheriff looked between them, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Miss Thornton, are you here of your own free will? Is this man holding you against your wishes? I am here because Mr. Quinn was kind enough to offer me sanctuary when I needed it, Hannah said clearly. I am staying of my own free will. Nobody is forcing me to do anything, which is more than I could say if I went back to Kingman. Marcus's face was red with anger now. You will regret this, Hannah. Do you think you can just humiliate me like this and face no consequences? Do you think your father will just let this go? I think, Bennett said, his voice still dangerously quiet, that you should get back on your horses and leave. Now. Before this escalates into something nobody wants. For a tense moment, it seemed like Marcus might try something. His hand hovered near his own gun, and the ranch hands looked ready to back whatever play he made. But then the sheriff cleared his throat again. I do not see as there is any crime being committed here, Mr. Dalton. The lady seems clear-headed and is stating her wishes plainly. I cannot force her to return against her will. He was clearly trying to extract himself from an uncomfortable situation. Marcus stared at Hannah with naked fury. This is not over. Your father will not stand for this. He will come for you himself. Then he can come, Hannah said. And I will tell him the same thing I am telling you. I am not a child. I am not property, and I am not going back. Marcus looked like he wanted to say more, but Pete reached over and grabbed his arm. "Come on, Marcus. Let us go. This is not worth it." With a final glare at both Hannah and Bennett, Marcus mounted his horse. The four riders turned and galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Hannah did not realize she was shaking until they were gone. Her legs felt weak, and she gripped the porch railing to keep herself steady. Bennett was immediately beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "You did good," he said softly. "That took courage." "I thought I was going to be sick," Hannah admitted. "When I saw Marcus, all I could think about was him grabbing my arm, hurting me. I almost ran back inside." "But you did not. You stood your ground. You told them exactly what you wanted." Bennett squeezed her shoulder gently, then released her. "Come on. Let us go inside. I will make some tea and we can talk about what happens next." Inside, Hannah sank into a chair at the table, her adrenaline slowly subsiding. Bennett put the kettle on and brought out some bread and jam, setting it before her without comment. When the tea was ready, he poured them both a cup and sat down across from her. "Marcus was right about one thing," Hannah said quietly. "My father will not let this go. He will come, or he will send more men. He will make things difficult for you." "Let him try," Bennett said. "Hannah, I meant what I said before. You are welcome here as long as you want to stay. If your father shows up, we will deal with it. If he tries to cause legal trouble, we will figure that out too. But you do not owe those men anything. Not your father, not Marcus, nobody. How can you be so calm about this? You could lose everything because of me." Bennett smiled slightly. "This ranch is not much, but it is paid for and in my name. I do not owe anybody money. I do not do business in Kingman, so your father has no economic leverage over me. What exactly can he do? He has got money and influence in town, but out here, that does not mean much. He could make things dangerous for you. He could try. But I have been in dangerous situations before, Hannah. I can handle myself." Hannah looked down at her tea, her emotions a swirl of gratitude, guilt, and something else she was not quite ready to name. "I do not know what I would have done without you. When I ran, I had no plan. I just knew I could not marry Marcus. Finding your barn that night felt like a miracle." "Maybe it was," Bennett said quietly. "Or maybe it was just luck. Either way, I am glad you ended up here. And I am not just saying that to make you feel better, I mean it. Having you here has been—" He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "It has been good. You are good company, you work hard. You make the place feel less lonely." Hannah looked up at him, surprised by the admission. Their eyes met across the table, and something passed between them in that moment. A recognition. An acknowledgement of something growing between them, delicate and new but undeniably there. Bennett looked away first, clearing his throat. "Anyway, point is, you are not a burden, you are welcome. For as long as you want to stay." "Thank you," Hannah whispered. That night, Hannah lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Marcus's face, twisted with rage. Her father's absence, sending others to retrieve her as if she was not worth his personal attention. And she thought about Bennett, standing between her and danger without hesitation, protecting her not because he owned her or controlled her, but simply because it was the right thing to do. She had never met a man like Bennett Quinn. In her world, men took what they wanted and called it their due. They valued women for what they could provide: status, connections, sons. But Bennett valued her for herself. He listened when she talked. He taught her skills without condescension. He gave her space to heal and grow without making demands in return. And somewhere in the past 3 weeks, Hannah had started to fall in love with him. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. How could she trust these feelings after what she had just escaped? How could she know this was not just gratitude or relief or some kind of dependence born of circumstance, But when she thought of Bennett, she did not feel fear or obligation. She felt safe. She felt seen. She felt like she could become whoever she wanted to be, and he would support her in that becoming. In his own bed across the hall, Bennett was having similar thoughts. He had not planned on caring about Hannah Thornton. She had been a problem to solve, a person in need of help. He had offered her sanctuary because it was the right thing to do, because he could not help his sister, because nobody else would. But at some point, she had stopped being a responsibility and had become something else entirely. He looked forward to her company. He noticed when she smiled. He found himself wanting to teach her things, not because she needed to know them, but because he wanted to share parts of his life with her. And today, when Marcus had lunged for her, Bennett had felt a surge of protective fury unlike anything he had experienced before. He was falling for her, probably had been for a while now. But what could he offer her? He was a small-time rancher with more dreams than money, living a hard life in the middle of nowhere. She had come from wealth and comfort, even if those things had come with unacceptable conditions. What if she was just grateful to him? What if, once the fear wore off, she realized she wanted more than this simple life could provide? He had no answers, only questions and the ache of wanting something he was not sure he could have. The next few weeks brought a welcome return to routine. No one else came from Kingman. Hannah worked beside Bennett every day, learning the rhythms of ranch life, growing stronger and more confident. She wrote a letter to her mother as promised, but received no reply. She tried not to let it hurt, but it did. The weather grew hotter as summer deepened into July. Hannah learned to work in the early morning and late evening, resting during the brutal heat of midday. She learned which plants were edible, which were medicinal, which were dangerous. She learned to shoot Bennett's rifle, awkwardly at first but with improving accuracy. She learned to read the sky for weather, to check the horizon for dust devils and storm clouds. And she learned the contours of her own heart, which seemed to expand daily with affection for the quiet cowboy who had taken her in. One evening in late July, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. They had been working on a new corral all day, and both were tired but satisfied with their progress. Hannah had taken to wearing her hair in a simple braid, and her face had acquired a light tan despite her attempts to wear a hat. She looked healthy, Bennett thought. Happy, even. "Can I ask you something?" Hannah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Sure. That first day when you found me in your barn, you said I could stay as long as I needed to heal. Did you mean heal from the bruises or something more?" Bennett considered the question. "Both, I suppose. Bruises fade pretty quick. But the other kind of hurt, the kind that comes from being controlled and threatened, that takes longer. I figured you would know when you were ready to figure out what came next." "What if I do not want there to be a next?" Hannah asked quietly. "What if I want this to be it? Here on this ranch, doing this work, living this life." Bennett's heart rate picked up, but he kept his voice steady. "Is that what you want?" Hannah turned to look at him directly. "I think so. No, I know so. I have spent my whole life being told what to do, who to be, how to act. Every choice was made for me. But here, I get to choose. I work because I want to, not because someone forces me. I am learning things because I want to learn them. And I am happier than I have ever been in my life, even though I sleep in a spare room and wear borrowed clothes and my hands have calluses for the first time ever." "Hannah," Bennett started, but she was not finished. "I know this probably is not what you signed up for when you offered me sanctuary. I know you probably expected me to stay a few weeks and then figure out where to go next. But Bennett, I do not want to go anywhere. I want to stay, if you will let me. Not as a guest or a charity case, but as—" She faltered, losing her courage. "As what?" Bennett asked gently. Hannah took a deep breath. As a partner. In the ranch, in this life. In whatever comes next, if you want that too, if you could possibly want that. Bennett was quiet for so long that Hannah started to panic. She had misread the situation. She had mistaken kindness for something more. She had ruined everything by speaking too soon, by wanting too much. But then Bennett reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm and strong around hers. Hannah Thornton, I have wanted that since about the second week you were here, maybe earlier, but I did not think I should say anything. You had just escaped one man trying to control you. I did not want you to feel pressured or obligated. You are nothing like Marcus, Hannah said fiercely. Nothing. Marcus wanted to own me. You want me to be free. That is not the same thing at all. I want you to be free, Bennett agreed. And I want you to be happy. And if both of those things could somehow include me, then I would be the luckiest man in the Arizona territory. Hannah felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears. Happy tears. You are sure? You really want this, want me? In answer, Bennett tugged gently on her hand, pulling her closer. He cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I want you. I want mornings working beside you. I want evenings on this porch talking with you. I want to teach you everything I know and learn everything you have to teach me. I want to build a life with you if you will have me. Yes, Hannah whispered. Yes, I want that. I want all of that. Bennett leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and kissed her softly. It was gentle and sweet, a promise more than a demand. Hannah melted into it, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart beating as fast as her own. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. So, Bennett said, still holding her close. Partners, partners, Hannah confirmed. There is one complication we should probably talk about, Bennett said after a moment. What is that? The propriety issue. You are living in my house. We are not married. I do not care what people think, but it could cause you problems. There is not much in the way of society out here, but there is some. Hannah laughed. Bennett, I ran away from my own wedding in front of the entire town of Kingman. I think my reputation is already beyond repair in the eyes of polite society. Fair point, Bennett grinned. Besides, Hannah continued, if you are asking me to marry you, I am saying yes. I ran from the last wedding because I did not want it, but this, us. I want this more than I have ever wanted anything. I am asking, Bennett said seriously, not because of propriety or because I think we have to, but because I want to. I want you to be my wife. I want to build this ranch, this life with you. What do you say? I say yes, Hannah said, and kissed him again. Absolutely yes. They were married 3 days later by a traveling preacher who happened through the area. It was about as different from Hannah's planned wedding to Marcus as anything could be. No fancy dress, no church full of people, no elaborate ceremony. Hannah wore one of her own dresses that she and Bennett had ridden to the nearest settlement to purchase, simple calico in a soft blue. Bennett wore clean work clothes and had trimmed his hair. The preacher performed the ceremony in their front yard, with the 2 horses as witnesses. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Bennett kissed her thoroughly, and Hannah thought her heart might burst from happiness. This was what it was supposed to feel like. This joy, this certainty, this sense of rightness. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the person she was supposed to be with. That night, lying in Bennett's arms in his bed that was now their bed, Hannah felt peace settle over her like a blanket. The fear that had been her constant companion for so long was gone. She was safe. She was loved. She was free. What are you thinking? Bennett murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. That 3 months ago I thought my life was ending, but it was actually just beginning. Bennett kissed the top of her head. Good beginning, the best beginning, Hannah confirmed. The next few months passed in a blur of hard work and deep contentment. Hannah threw herself into learning everything about running a ranch. She was not content to be just a rancher's wife in the traditional sense, helping with cooking and cleaning. She wanted to know everything: how to manage the cattle, how to keep the books, how to make decisions about buying and selling. Bennett taught her everything willingly, treating her as a true partner in every sense. They worked together to expand the herd, using careful planning and most of their savings to purchase additional breeding stock. They reinforced the fencing, improved the water system, made plans for a larger barn. The work was endless and exhausting, but they did it together, and that made all the difference. In September, Richard Thornton finally made an appearance. He arrived alone, without the hired muscle or county sheriff, driving a buggy rather than riding in on horseback. Hannah and Bennett were working in the garden they had planted near the house when he arrived. Hannah felt her whole body tense as her father climbed down from the buggy. She had not seen him in 4 months, and he looked older than she remembered, grayer, more worn, but his expression was hard as he approached. "Hannah," he said curtly, not even glancing at Bennett, "I need to speak with you, alone." "Anything you have to say to my wife, you can say in front of me," Bennett said mildly, but there was steel underneath the words. Richard's eyes cut to Bennett for the first time. "Your wife. We were married in July," Hannah said, lifting her chin. "Bennett Quinn is my husband." For a long moment, Richard just stared. Then his shoulders seemed to deflate slightly. "Your mother has been ill. The doctor says it is her nerves. She wants to see you." Hannah felt a pang of concern, but she did not rush to accommodate him. "What kind of ill?" "She has not left her bed in weeks. She barely eats. All she does is ask for you." Richard's voice was accusing. "You did this to her." "No," Hannah said firmly. "I did not do this to her. I made a choice about my own life. If Mother is upset, it is because she would rather I be miserable and married to Marcus than happy and married to Bennett. That is her choice, not mine." "Marcus left town," Richard said abruptly. "Moved to California from what I hear. He wanted to leave before the scandal reached him. Said he could not do business in a town where everyone was talking about how his bride ran away." "Good," Hannah thought but did not say. "Let him be someone else's problem somewhere else." "As for your mother," Richard continued, "she deserves better than this. You are her only child. She raised you, sacrificed for you, and you repay her by running off and living in sin with some drifter." "Watch your tongue," Bennett interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "I do not care if you are Hannah's father. You do not speak about her that way, and you do not insult me on my own property." Richard looked at Bennett properly for the first time, and something in Bennett's steady, unflinching gaze seemed to give him pause. "Fine," he said curtly, "but the fact remains, your mother wants to see you, Hannah. I am not asking you to come home. I am asking you to visit. One visit. Give her peace of mind that you are alive and well." Hannah looked at Bennett, who squeezed her hand gently but said nothing. The choice was hers. "I will visit," she said slowly, "on my terms. Bennett and I will come to Kingman together. We will visit Mother for one afternoon, and then we will leave. And Father, if you or anyone else tries to make me stay, if there are any tricks or traps, I promise you I will disappear and you will never see me again. Do you understand?" Richard's jaw worked, but he finally nodded. "Fine. 1 week from today, come to the house in the afternoon." After he left, Hannah turned into Bennett's embrace, letting him hold her. "I do not want to go, but if my mother is really ill, then we will go," Bennett said simply. "Together. Like you said, and at the first sign of trouble we leave." "Agreed." "Agreed." The week passed too quickly. Hannah found herself increasingly anxious as the day approached. They rode into Kingman on a clear October morning, both mounted on horseback rather than taking a wagon. ready for a quick escape if needed. Hannah wore a simple but respectable dress, her hair neatly braided. Bennett wore his cleanest clothes and had strapped on his pistol, visible at his hip as a clear warning. Kingman looked the same as it always had, bustling and prosperous. People stared as they rode through town. Hannah heard whispers, saw heads turning. She kept her gaze forward, her back straight. Let them stare. Let them gossip. She was no longer that frightened girl who had run away in a wedding dress. She was Hannah Quinn, rancher's wife, and she was not ashamed of anything she had done. The Thornton house was an imposing structure on the edge of town, 3 stories of wealth and privilege. Hannah had grown up here, but it no longer felt like home. When they dismounted, Bennett kept close to her side, his presence a reassuring anchor. A servant answered the door, her eyes widening at the sight of Hannah. "Miss Hannah, I mean Mrs. Quinn," Hannah supplied gently. "Is my mother receiving visitors?" "Yes, madam. She is in her room. I will let her know you are here." They were shown into a formal sitting room to wait. Everything was exactly as Hannah remembered. Expensive furniture, imported carpets, tasteful artwork on the walls. All of it purchased with her father's money, meant to display wealth and status. It felt cold and empty compared to the warm simplicity of the ranch house she now called home. Her mother appeared after a few minutes, and Hannah was shocked by her appearance. Margaret Thornton had always been elegant and composed, but the woman who entered the sitting room looked fragile and pale. She had lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Hannah," she whispered and burst into tears. Despite everything, Hannah felt her own eyes fill. She went to her mother, embracing her carefully. "I am here, Mother, I am all right." Margaret pulled back, studying Hannah's face through her tears. "You look different, healthy, happy even." She sounded surprised. "I am happy," Hannah confirmed gently. "Mother, this is my husband, Bennett Quinn." Bennett had stood when Margaret entered, and he nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Thornton." Margaret looked at him with obvious skepticism. "You married him, a rancher. Hannah, you could have had everything. Marcus would have given you everything." "Marcus would have hurt me," Hannah said bluntly. "Worse than he already did. I showed you the bruises, Mother. I told you what he did. You would not listen." "All couples have disagreements," Margaret said weakly, the same line she had used before. "That was not a disagreement. That was violence. And it would have continued for the rest of my life." Hannah took her mother's hands. "Mother, I know this is not the life you wanted for me, but it is the life I want for myself. I am happy. I am safe. Bennett treats me with respect and kindness. We are building something together. Can that not be enough for you?" Margaret looked at her daughter for a long moment, then at Bennett. "Do you love him?" "Yes," Hannah said without hesitation. "Very much. And does he love you?" "Yes, madam," Bennett said quietly. "I do, more than I can properly express." Margaret sank into a chair, looking exhausted. "Your father is furious. He says you have disgraced the family. He will not even speak your name." "Then that is his choice," Hannah said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "I made my choice to live my own life. He can make his choice about whether to be part of that life or not." "And what is my choice?" Margaret asked softly. "Can I be part of your life even if I do not understand it, even if I wish you had chosen differently?" Hannah felt tears spill over. "Yes, Mother, of course, yes. You are always welcome to visit us, to write to us, to be part of our lives, if you want to be." Margaret reached out and took Hannah's hand. "Tell me about it, this life you have chosen." So Hannah did. She told her mother about the ranch, small but growing. About learning to ride and work cattle and tend a garden. About the vast sky and open spaces. About the satisfaction of building something with your own hands. About Bennett's patience and kindness, the way they worked side by side, the way he treated her as an equal partner. As Hannah talked, she saw her mother's expression shift from skepticism to something else. Understanding, perhaps, or at least acceptance. When Hannah finished, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You really are happy. I can see it in your eyes." "I do not understand it, but I can see it." "That is all I ask," Hannah said, "for you to see it, to believe it." Margaret turned to Bennett. "You will take care of her, keep her safe." "With my life," Bennett said simply. Margaret nodded slowly. "Then I suppose I must make peace with this." "You are my daughter, Hannah. You are all I have. I cannot lose you, even if it means accepting a life I never imagined for you." "Thank you, Mother," Hannah whispered. They stayed for another hour, talking about safer topics. Margaret wanted to know everything about the ranch, about their daily routines, about their plans for the future. She was trying, Hannah realized, trying to understand and accept this new reality. It was not perfect, but it was something. As they prepared to leave, Margaret embraced Hannah tightly. "Write to me, please." "I will," Hannah promised. "Every week if you want. I want that very much." As they rode out of Kingman, Hannah felt lighter than she had in months. The visit had gone better than she had dared hope. Her mother was not happy about Hannah's choices, but she was willing to maintain a relationship. It was more than Hannah had expected. "That went well, all things considered," Bennett observed as they left the town behind. "It did," Hannah agreed. "Thank you for coming with me. I could not have done it alone." "You are not alone," Bennett said, reaching over to take her hand as they rode side by side. "Not anymore, not ever again." The rest of the year passed in a blur of activity. They worked hard to prepare the ranch for winter, laying in supplies, reinforcing structures, moving the cattle to better protected pastures. When the first snows came in December, Hannah and Bennett spent long, cozy evenings by the fire, planning for the year ahead. In January, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. The realization was both terrifying and thrilling. She had never thought much about having children before, but now the prospect filled her with a complex mix of emotions. She told Bennett one evening after dinner, nervous about his reaction. Bennett's face split into the widest smile she had ever seen on him. He picked her up and spun her around, then set her down carefully as if she might break. "Really? We are having a baby, really," Hannah confirmed, laughing at his excitement. "In late summer, the doctor thinks. Are you happy?" "Happy?" Bennett cupped her face in his hands, his eyes bright. "Hannah, I am more than happy. I am overwhelmed, amazed, terrified, but mostly just incredibly, impossibly happy." He kissed her thoroughly, and Hannah felt her anxiety melt away. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The pregnancy was not easy. Hannah struggled with nausea in the early months, exhaustion that seemed to seep into her bones. But Bennett was endlessly patient, taking on extra work so she could rest, bringing her ginger tea for the nausea, holding her when the fears about childbirth threatened to overwhelm her. As her belly grew, Hannah had to adapt her work around the ranch. She could not lift heavy things or ride as much, but she found other ways to contribute. She took over the bookkeeping entirely, managing their finances with a careful eye. She tended the garden, prepared and preserved food for the coming year, sewed baby clothes from scraps of fabric. Margaret visited twice during the pregnancy, bringing gifts for the baby and advice that was sometimes helpful and sometimes overwhelming. Richard did not come, but Margaret reported that he had softened slightly at the news of a grandchild. It was not a reconciliation, but it was something. In late August, as the heat of summer began to break, Hannah went into labor. Bennett rode for the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson who lived on a nearby ranch. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Bennett stayed by Hannah's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering encouragement and love. When their son finally entered the world, wailing and red-faced, Hannah wept with relief and joy. Bennett cut the cord with shaking hands, his own eyes wet with tears. Mrs. Henderson cleaned the baby and placed him in Hannah's arms, and Hannah looked down at the tiny, perfect face of her child and felt her heart expand to accommodate this new, overwhelming love. "He is beautiful," Bennett whispered, one finger gently stroking their son's cheek. "You are amazing, you did so well." "We did well," Hannah corrected, leaning into him. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never quite settled on one. Now, holding their son, Bennett said, "What about William, after my father? William Quinn." "William Quinn," Hannah repeated softly. "I love it. Hello, William. Welcome to your life." William proved to be a healthy, hungry baby with a powerful set of lungs. Those first few months were an exhausted blur of feedings and diaper changes and very little sleep. But Hannah had never been happier. Watching Bennett with their son, seeing the gentleness and wonder with which he held the baby, fell even more deeply in love with her husband. As William grew, the ranch grew with him. They added more cattle, expanded their grazing land, built the larger barn they had been planning. Hannah worked alongside Bennett as much as she could, often with William strapped to her back in a carrier Bennett had fashioned. Their son would grow up knowing the land, knowing the work, knowing what it meant to build something with your own hands. Margaret became a regular visitor, coming every few months to see her grandson. She and Hannah's relationship gradually warmed, becoming something real and affectionate rather than just the performance of duty. Margaret even admitted during one visit that she could see why Hannah had chosen this life. "You glow with it," she said, "with happiness. I never saw that in you before, not when you lived in Kingman." Richard remained distant, but he sent money occasionally and gifts for William. It was not the relationship Hannah might have wanted, but she had learned to accept what people could give rather than resent what they could not. The years flowed by like water. William grew from a baby to a toddler to a young boy, strong and curious and full of joy. When he was 3, Hannah gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, after Bennett's sister, whom they had never been able to find. Sarah was quieter than her brother but just as determined, with her father's blue eyes and her mother's dark hair. The ranch prospered. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable, and they were building something lasting, something they could pass to their children. Bennett taught William to ride almost as soon as the boy could walk. Hannah taught both children to read from the small collection of books they had accumulated, and to do the arithmetic they would need to manage the ranch accounts one day. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Bennett surprised Hannah by taking her on a picnic to the spot where she had first hidden in his barn. They left the children with Mrs. Henderson for the afternoon and rode out together, just the two of them as they had been in the beginning. They spread a blanket near the barn and ate the simple meal Hannah had prepared. The barn had been expanded and improved over the years, but it was still recognizable as the place where their story had begun. "You ever regret it?" Bennett asked, lying back on the blanket and looking up at the impossibly blue sky. "Running away, ending up here." Hannah lay down beside him, their shoulders touching. "Not for a single moment. Every good thing in my life started the night I hid in your barn. You, William, Sarah, this ranch, this life. All of it began because I was brave enough to run and you were kind enough to let me stay." Bennett turned his head to look at her, his eyes warm with love. "Stay as long as you need to heal, I told you." "I did heal," Hannah said softly. "I healed from things I did not even know were wounds. And then I stayed because I fell in love, with you, with this place, with the person I became here." Bennett reached over and laced his fingers through hers. "Best decision I ever made, telling you to stay." Best decision I ever made, listening to you." They lay there in the afternoon sun, hands clasped, listening to the wind moving through the grass and the distant sounds of their cattle. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life together in the light. 3 more children came in the following years. Another daughter named Emily, and twin boys they named James and Daniel. The ranch house had to be expanded to accommodate the growing family, and the work became more complex with each passing season. But Bennett and Hannah faced it all together, their partnership as strong as ever. William grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. Sarah proved to have a gift with horses, able to gentle even the wildest Mustang with patience and soft words. Emily was the scholar, always reading, always asking questions, eventually going to school in town and then to a teaching college, though she always came home for visits. The twins were inseparable and mischievous, keeping everyone on their toes. As the children grew and became more independent, Hannah and Bennett had more time for each other again. They would still take evening rides together, just the two of them, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. They would sit on the porch, their hands clasped, talking about everything and nothing. One evening, when Hannah was in her mid-40s and Bennett was approaching 50, they sat together watching their grown children work around the ranch. William was married now, with a child of his own. Sarah was courting a young rancher from the next property over. The twins were still young and wild, but showing signs of the men they would become. "We did good," Bennett said quietly. "We did," Hannah agreed. "Better than good." Bennett pulled her closer and she rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Hannah Quinn. I loved you when you were a frightened girl hiding in my barn. I loved you when you became my wife and my partner. I loved you through every birth and every challenge, and I will love you until my last breath." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind. "I love you too. You saved me, Bennett, in every way a person can be saved." "You saved yourself," Bennett corrected gently. "You had the courage to run, to choose your own path. I just held the door open. You did more than that. You showed me what love could be. Real love, not control dressed up as affection. You showed me what it meant to be partners, to build something together. You gave me a life I never dreamed was possible." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear. Somewhere in the house behind them, they could hear laughter, the sounds of their family. The ranch that had started as a struggling enterprise was now thriving, ready to support another generation. Hannah thought back to that terrified girl in the wedding dress, running through the darkness with no plan and no hope. She could hardly recognize herself in that person anymore. She had become someone new here, someone strong and capable and free. And it had all started because a kind cowboy had found her hiding in his barn and told her she could stay. "Thank you," she whispered into the gathering darkness. "For what?" Bennett asked. "For everything. For the life we built, for the family we made, for choosing me." Bennett kissed the top of her head. "Always. I will always choose you." As they sat together under the stars, surrounded by the life they had created through love and hard work and determination, Hannah felt complete. She had run from a cage and found freedom. She had fled from cruelty and found kindness. She had escaped a prison of expectations and found a place where she could be wholly, authentically herself. The ranch would continue. Their children would carry it forward, and their grandchildren after that. The story that had begun with a desperate flight in a wedding dress would echo through generations. But its heart, its true beginning, was this: a frightened woman finding sanctuary in a barn, and a good man telling her she could stay as long as she needed to heal. And she had stayed. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Because she had found love in the last place she expected it, with a man who saw her not as property but as a person, because together they had built something that mattered. As the night deepened and the desert cooled around them, Hannah and Bennett sat together in perfect contentment, their hands clasped, their hearts joined, their future secure. They had weathered every storm together and would weather every storm to come. They were partners in every sense of the word, bound not by chains but by choice, every single day choosing each other and the life they had built. It was not the life Hannah had been raised to expect. It was not what her parents had planned for her. But it was hers, earned through courage and sustained through love. And she would not have traded a single moment of it for all the wealth and status in the world. Bennett squeezed her hand gently, and Hannah squeezed back, a simple gesture that contained everything they had been through and everything they had yet to face. Together. Always together. The years continued to roll by like seasons, each bringing its own joys and challenges. When Hannah turned 50, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Her mother, now elderly but still sharp, made the journey from Kingman. Her father had passed away 2 years prior, and while their relationship had never fully healed, Hannah had made peace with it. She had learned that you could not force people to understand your choices. You could only live them fully and hope that someday they would see the wisdom in them. William's children, Hannah and Bennett's grandchildren, ran wild around the ranch, their laughter echoing across the land. Sarah had married her rancher and lived on the neighboring property, close enough to visit regularly. Emily had become a teacher in Flagstaff, but spent her summers at home. The twins had taken over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, allowing Bennett and Hannah to slow down slightly, though neither could imagine fully retiring from the work they loved. At the celebration, Hannah stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house and looked out at her family, at the land they had cultivated, at the life they had built. Bennett came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and she leaned back into his embrace. "What are you thinking?" he asked, a question he had asked her countless times over the years. "I am thinking about that first night," Hannah said, "when I stumbled into your barn in a wedding dress, terrified and alone. If someone had told me then that this would be my life, you, our children, this ranch, this happiness, I would not have believed them. It would have seemed too impossible." "But it is not impossible," Bennett said. "It is real, and it is ours." "It is ours," Hannah agreed, turning in his arms to face him. "Everything we have, we built together, and I would do it all again exactly the same way just to end up here with you." Bennett kissed her, a kiss that contained decades of love and partnership, of shared struggles and shared triumphs. When they pulled apart, their grandchildren were calling for them, wanting them to join the celebration. Hand in hand, they walked toward their family, toward the life they had created together. The runaway bride and the cowboy who had given her sanctuary. The woman who had fled from control and found freedom. The man who had offered help and found love. Their story was not a fairy tale with a magical transformation. It was better than that. It was real. It was earned. It was built day by day, choice by choice, through hard work and dedication and love that never wavered even in the darkest times. As the sun set over the Arizona desert that night, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red and purple, Hannah looked around at everything they had accomplished. 5 children, now grown and making their own lives. Grandchildren carrying forward the legacy they had begun. A ranch that had started as a struggling enterprise and had become a thriving operation. A love that had only deepened with time, growing richer and more complex with each passing year. She caught Bennett's eye across the gathering, and he smiled at her, that same steady, warm smile that had made her feel safe all those years ago when she had been terrified and desperate. She smiled back, a smile full of love and gratitude and deep contentment. This was home. This was family. This was the life she had chosen when she made the brave decision to run, and when she made the even braver decision to stay. Every scar, every challenge, every moment of doubt had been worth it to arrive at this moment, surrounded by love and looking toward a future full of hope. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky and the celebration continued around them, Hannah sent up a silent prayer of thanks. Thanks for the courage to run. Thanks for the barn that had sheltered her. Thanks for the cowboy who had told her to stay as long as she needed to heal. And thanks for the love that had not just healed her, but had transformed her entire life. She had stayed much longer than she needed to heal. She had stayed forever by choice, building a beautiful life with a beautiful man in the wild Arizona territory, and she would not have had it any other way. The end of their story was really just the beginning of many others, their children's stories, their grandchildren's stories, generations that would follow carrying forward the values they had instilled. But for Hannah and Bennett, sitting together on the porch later that night after everyone had gone to bed, it was perfect just as it was. "Tired?" Bennett asked, noting Hannah's contented sigh. "A little, but happy, so very happy." "Me too," Bennett said, pulling her close. "Me too." They sat there in the comfortable silence they had perfected over decades of marriage, listening to the night sounds of the desert, the distant call of a coyote, the soft sounds of the horses in the barn. The same barn where it had all begun, where a frightened woman in a wedding dress had hidden, and where a kind cowboy had found her and changed both their lives forever. "Stay as long as you need," he had told her, and she had stayed a lifetime.